ladies and gentlemen, thank you for clicking on another Rank the Movies video. This week we are starting a new franchise month, focusing on our horror film franchises. We're doing it the rest of September, all of October, and the start of November. I've got a lot of horror movie franchises to cover, and a little time to cover them in. This week we started all off with the horror movie franchise that kind of set the stage for all of them. We already know Friday the 13th is my favorite horror movie franchise. If you didn't know that, check the video, Friday the 13th from my last franchise month, and just watch it. I really do like that series. I think it's a very strong series, so much like the Friday the 13th series, I'm going to ask the same question I asked then for each of these horror franchises. Is it a good franchise? Is it an average franchise? Or is it a bad franchise? So we'll look at each movie and rank them based on that scale. So let's get started with George Romero's Of the Dead series. Ooh, zombie films. I love zombie films. I love the Resident Evil films. I love Return of the Living Dead. I like zombie films. So we're going to primarily talk about the 6 actual Romero films. I'm going to touch the remakes of the first 3. I'm not going to put them in the actual ranking system at the end. I'm just going to touch upon them. Alright, so obviously we need to talk about Night of the Living Dead, the original, the classic, the public domain film. Basically, zombies rise from the dead for no apparent reason and terrorize a group of people hiding out in a farmhouse. It is a fun movie. It is a great movie. It's a black and white classic. Obviously, there's no real gore in the film because it's in black and white. Gore doesn't really translate that well in black and white. It can still look gory and great, but it doesn't translate as well as it does in, beautiful, multicolored movies. But it is. You get some strong characters. You have Barbara, whose brother is killed in a cemetery as they go to visit their mother's grave, or father's grave, one of their parents' graves. They change it in the remake. I can't remember which now. Anyways, you have Barbara, who is grieving over that, and she's kind of a weak-willed woman, who you don't quite like. She's very scared. You have our star of this movie is Ben. Ben is a strong man. He knows what he's doing, and he knows what he doesn't want to do. And then you have a group of people who have been hiding in a basement for a while, one of which is Bit. So this is the first person that transforms in a zombie film. Because that's what happens. It's a daughter, so it's a small child. Her parents, who are actually her parents, that's right, the daughter, the 2 people playing her parents are actually her parents. One of them is kind of the doting wife, the other one is a jackass, who believes the basement is the only safe place, and another group, 2 kind of teenish country people who, the house is their uncles. They're all trying to survive, and they're all slowly dying from the zombies. In the end, it's got one of the saddest endings in movie history, as there is no survivor of this movie, on screen anyways. But it is a great film. So, let's put it on our good, average, or bad chart. Night of the Living Dead's a good movie. There we go. Night of the Living Dead. It's a good movie. It is worth checking out. If you've never seen Night of the Living Dead, do it. It is worth the time. Don't be a person who doesn't like black and white movies. Watch it. It is a great film. It was followed up by Dawn of the Dead. George Romero decided he wanted to make a sequel and continue his lore. So that's what he did. He made Dawn of the Dead. When there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth. That's a great tagline. Dawn of the Dead takes place a few weeks after Night of the Living Dead in continuity. The dead keep rising, and the world begins to fall apart. There's still people fighting back, there's still people surviving, but things are breaking down as there are more and more dead, who are coming up and trying to kill people. So, the main focus is 4 people, 2 of which work for a news station, which they escape via the news copter. The other 2 are SWAT officers or cops, who are completely disillusioned with what's going on, and decide to flee with our friends in the helicopter. They end up taking refuge in a shopping mall, where the vast majority of this movie takes place. It takes place in a mall, because it's strong, it has all the supplies they need, and it has places they can hide. They secure them all, rid it of its zombies. One person falls along the way to a bite, and they end up having a group of bikers break into it, which leads to the climax of the film. This one is a lot of fun, and obviously, Dawn of the Dead, it's a classic. It is a good movie. You cannot say Dawn of the Dead is not a good movie. It is a great movie. If you're squirmish, don't watch it. Tom Savini's effects are amazing in this film, and they really, really are. It is just great. Dawn of the Dead was followed by Day of the Dead. First there was the night, then the day, then first you have the night, then you have the day, then you have the dawn, now you have the day. This one takes place years after the start of the zombie apocalypse, and you now have a group of survivors who live in an underground laboratory / mine system. They are there, it's part military, part civilian. The military is there to protect the civilian researchers who are trying to figure out how to revert the zombie virus, stop the zombie virus, save the human race. They also have a pilot to fly a chopper as they look for other survivors, and a radio operator to try to contact other bases. They've lost contact. A lot of people have died from when the infection, from when this base first began, and the people who are getting cabin fever. They are been stuck underground for so long, they are beginning to feel the effects of it. You have one doctor who's gone so mad, his experiments are no longer about trying to cure the disease, but trying to domesticate the zombies. He achieves this with one of them using human meat as a reward for good behavior, which of course sets off the chain of events that leads to the compound being swarmed by the dead, which leads to our bloody conclusion to this film. It is a lot of fun. I can't say enough. I didn't care for Day of the Dead when I first watched it, but now it has grown on me a lot. It has grown on me a lot. In fact, when I first watched it, I probably would have put it in the average or bad column, but nowadays, it's a good movie. Day of the Dead is a good movie. It is worth watching. It's worth checking out. It is a great trilogy. It's a great trilogy to start us with. Years and years later, George Romero was given the opportunity to make one more zombie film. He ended up making 3 more, but he was given the opportunity to make another zombie film called Land of the Dead. This one would take place about the same time as Day of the Dead in continuity. In fact, he borrowed a lot of script ideas from his Day of the Dead script that he couldn't add into it. Basically, you have a city that is protected by rivers because zombies can't swim, and has electric fencing protecting its other border. It has an underground tunnel that leads back to the land, so they have a kind of mechanic shop there, so they can get cars to go out and pillage the dead towns. There are 2 levels. You have people who live in the giant tower, kind of condominium, has shopping centers in it. It is for the rich and affluent people who live in this town, and then you have kind of the slums all around it, where they're basically occupied by sex, gambling, and other addictions. Eventually, it continues the idea that Day of the Dead started, that the dead can learn, because after raiding a town, the dead begin to follow the raiders back to this community. And they start to learn how to use weapons. They realize water's not a problem because they sink to the bottom and they don't need air, so they can just walk across the ground. And the water actually isn't a barrier anymore until they're swarming the city. While all this is going on, one of the raiders, one of the people who goes out to get supplies, tries to get by his way with actual money into this affluent tower, is told no, and is basically said to be disposed of, escapes his own execution, steals the raider's primary vehicle, which is a giant armored tank, basically, and threatens to bomb the city if his demands are not met for more money, so he can go start a new life in a different community, believing there is a different community out there. The creator of the vehicle is sent out to get him, and while they're away is when the zombies start to attack the city, and they go back to try to save them. It is a really good movie. I enjoy Land of the Dead. I think Romero really, he followed up his Dead movies with a great movie. And again, it shows that evolution of the zombies from being mindless to, now they're working together. They're using weapons. There is a level of intelligence still there. Where does it fall on my scale? It's good. I like Land of the Dead. There are 6 movies in this series. The last 2 could be bad, and at worst, it will skew this thing to average hardcore. But right now, it's definitely good. So we got 2 movies left. We have Diary of the Dead. Now, if you watched last week's video and listened to me talk about 10 Cloverfield Lane, you heard me say I didn't much care for Cloverfield because of the found footage aspect of that movie. Basically, a movie that's shot for real. Diary of the Dead does that as well. It is a group of college students who are filmmakers, and one of them can't help but document what is going on. Actually, George Romero does a great job making sure you understand why everything is being filmed, how it's being filmed, and how they're getting this footage by using different aspects, and even making sure the video quality changes depending on what's being used. Basically, this takes us back in time to the beginning of the zombie apocalypse, Night of the Living Dead time, but upgraded to modern technologies. And again, it's a group of college kids just trying to get home. Because home is safe, home is where your family is, and along the way they're running into zombies, and losing some members, and realizing the severity of what is going on. It is a fun movie. Romero does a great job with it. I put it in the average column, but this is really high average. Like, 1 or 2 things would have knocked it into the good column, but just comparing it to these other 4 movies, it goes there. It goes there. But it is still a very well done and very good movie. So that leaves 1 movie left in the Night of the Living Dead series, and that is Survival of the Dead. This is the final movie in Romero's zombie series. Survival isn't just for the living. Basically, this movie looks a little more, and it probably takes place about the same time as Dawn of the Dead. In that continuity, again, updated for a modern audience, so it's kind of almost backtracking. Where the first trilogy moves forward in time, Land of the Dead picks up where Day of the Dead leaves off, and then you have a Night of the Living Dead companion, and this is the Dawn of the Dead companion. Basically, it's how you can look at it on a timeline. And you have an island which is basically inhabited by 2 families, and always has been. These families are, of course, at war, because if you stick 2 families on an island, that's what's going to happen. One group believes the dead need to be killed. The other group, the bigger group, believes zombies and the dead need to be kept alive, because they're still people, they're still family, and you need to keep them around. You can't just shoot them in the head. They end up excising the leader of the Kill 'Em movement, who begins to send people out there to piss off the other family by selling them boats to go to a safe island. When a group of soldiers who actually appear in Diary of the Dead arrive, they end up starting a firefight, and the zombies break out, and they all escape to the island with the leader of the Kill 'Em movement of these 2 families. On the island, you learn that they're now trying to teach the zombies to eat something other than human, because if they can do that, if they can eat something that isn't human, then there's a chance for coexistence. It is a fun movie. It is an enjoyable film. It's a good ending. It's not great. If you're comparing it to Dawn of the Dead or Day of the Dead, it's not great, but it's still a very well done movie. In fact, let's put it on our scale. It's average. So I want to point out, not a single one of the Romero films falls into the bad spectrum. None of them do. Romero made 4 good movies, followed by 2 average movies, so it's a good series. The George A. Romero of the Dead series is a good series of films. They have strong points, they have their weak points, but it is a good series nonetheless. And it's definitely worth checking out. But before I give my final rankings, I want to take a second to talk about the 3 remakes of the first 3 movies, the official remakes. Night of the Living Dead, being public domain, has many remakes, but only one is official, and that's from 1990, Night of the Living Dead, directed by Tom Savini, who did the gore effects on Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead. He directed this version of Night of the Living Dead. It's colorized, it's very similar to the original. The biggest difference is the Barbara character, who they do a 360 on her, and make her, or 180, I'm sorry, they do a 180 on her, and make her more of the, badass woman, which they really don't give a reason why she's a badass woman. She just is badass. So that's my biggest catch with this one. It's not a bad remake, it's not a bad adaptation or update of the film. That's my biggest problem, is that I don't mind them making Barbara stronger, and I think that's the good. I think that's the good way to go with it. Is that she should have been made stronger. I just would have liked a little more definition behind why that is. Next up, that was followed by Dawn of the Dead, which was released in the early 2000s. That is, of course, the remake of the same name. Again, it's updated. There are more people in the shopping mall. There are less zombies in the shopping mall to begin with as well. I've never minded it. It's not as good as the original, but it's not bad. It's not a bad remake. These two are both very well done remakes of their movies. Dawn of the Dead, of course. Both of these were theatrically released. Dawn of the Dead is the more well-known of the two. And it does take the most liberties between the two of the original story. Last up, we have Day of the Dead, made in 2008, which actually also... So Dawn of the Dead features Ving Rhames, and Day of the Dead features Ving Rhames, playing two different characters. And Ving Rhames was considered for one of the roles in Night of the Living Dead. So he could have been in all three of these, but he wasn't. He's only in the last two. As far as a remake goes, Day of the Dead is a spiritual remake. It does not follow the story. It has some characters from the original. If it wasn't called Day of the Dead, I'd say it's a pretty average zombie movie. As a remake of Day of the Dead, it's bad, but it's a pretty average zombie movie overall. Once you separate yourself from it being a Day of the Dead remake, it's a pretty average zombie film. So I've now covered the remakes. And of course there's another one called Day of the Dead, Bloodline. I have not watched it. I looked up the plot synopsis earlier today in preparation for this. It sounds about as close to the original as the 2008 version does. So, you know. Alright, so final rankings. I'm going to include the remakes. We're just going to talk solely about the 6 original Romero films. So at 6th place, my least favorite is Survival of the Dead. It is still a really good movie, and 6th place is still very good, because I don't absolutely hate any of these films. I love watching them. But Survival of the Dead is my least favorite, followed by Diary of the Dead. Those aren't hard ones to figure out. They were the average movies. They don't entertain those last 2 spots. Number 4 is the original Night of the Living Dead. As much as the original is a classic, I feel like these other 3 movies just did it better. Romero had more budget, which definitely helped, but he also told a better story in all of them. Budget doesn't always mean you tell a worse story. Budget just means you can make it look better. I just feel like Dawn, Day, and Land just tell better stories than Night of the Living Dead does, so that's why they got pushed up this list. Number 3, the bronze medal, goes to Land of the Dead. I really like this movie. It's such a good movie. I don't care if a lot of people think it's not the greatest Romero film. I like it, and they can shut up. Number 2, our silver medalist, is Day of the Dead. Again, I am super thrilled with Day of the Dead now. I didn't care for it that much when it first came out, but now I really, really enjoy it. It is a fun film. It is definitely worth checking out. I think it's very well done, and I think it all depends on my mood, but this is a really close 1 and 2. Because the gold medal obviously goes to Dawn of the Dead, which is the only one I haven't talked about yet, but it's a really close 1 and 2. With a pretty close 3, and then they're all pretty close in this ranking system as far as they are to the next one above it. But Dawn of the Dead is my favorite. I agree with critics and everyone else. It is such a well-done film. If you've never seen it, it's worth checking out. It is definitely one of those movies you need to watch. It is by far the pinnacle of zombie films, and I think every zombie film tries to be the original Dawn of the Dead. Alright, so let me know in the comments what you think of the Romero films. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I should shut up and the original is the only one worth watching. Who knows? Like this video, subscribe if you want to see more. Don't forget, Thursdays is the bonus content video of the week. So check that out. And check us out next week. We'll be moving in to another classic horror franchise with too many timelines. That is the Halloween franchise. See you then.